Hey everyone, welcome to another battle report of gaming in the Keats. Today we're doing my Berlin Liga match 5, and this time I got paired up against Warriors of the Dark Gods. So, yeah, I'm super excited to play against Warriors. I feel like I brought a list today that pairs well against them, so yeah. Let's check out those lists. But before we check out these lists, so I'm just giving a recap here of where I'm standing in the league. Right now, I'm in third place with 49 points. So that last loss I took, spoiler alert, from my match 4 set me back, but not terribly too far. So I'm hoping to have a good win today so I can get back up to either the top or second spot. So now, going over my lists. Yeah, I'm starting things off this time. I'm going back to the courtesan, a wizard master. I tried her in the first game and she died to a zombie dragon. So I'm going to give her another chance. She's going to be represented by my Morathai Shadow Queen model. But she's got her Resilience 6 and just Chitna Scales to give her a bit of armor, but that is it. Then the big boy, the big wings on that wonderful model painted up by a good friend of mine, Phil Carl, is the Miser of Sugalug. He's my general today, and he's going to be a wizard master of evocation simply with the segmented shell. So I took that just in case I happen to run into any cannons or anything with multi-wounds, so you can at least have those multi-wounds, making him just a little bit more resilient, and especially at Resilience 7, he's pretty damn resilient. Then I just have two big, well, not big, but 2 units of Myrmidons, both with Piercing Spike, because I just wanted to keep it simple this time when I was making my list. I'm trying out the Hoarders again, this time with Mirrored Scales. I like the idea of my opponent rolling 1s and hitting themselves, which I think is pretty hilarious. So I'm trying out the Hoarders. And then going back to Bloatflies this time using Digestive Vomit. So the first time that they're on the winning side of combat, they get +1 strength and +1 AP, which against warriors will really help. And then to round things out, 2 units of 5 Furies for Chaff. So my opponent's list, he's got his Sorcerer on the Scythed Wheel with Master of Occultism and Destiny's Call. So 4 up, only 3 wounds on that model, I believe. But he's just going to be flying around and trying to blow my army up. He's got his General, just an Adept of Alchemy, and he's got a nice little, what was the term? I called him a cowboy, but I guess he's not really riding a horse. He's he's basically like a cannonball, except this guy doesn't have the D3 wounds, but it's one of those 1-up rerollable armor save Chosen Lords who can fly and just rockets into something. Oh yeah, he's the Rocket Man. That's what the name was. So he just flies into something and ties it up and kills it. He does have Cleansing Light, so my bigger demons do need to be a little concerned about him, but he doesn't do any multi-wounds, no Burning Portent, so I'm like, okay, he's killy, but he's more for dealing with my infantry and my scoring units, I think. But yeah, he's a problem. He's going to cause me issues if I don't deal with him. Then we just have 21 Warriors of Greed, the Zealot's Banner. We got the 15 Barbarians with the Banner of Speed. So that Chosen Lord then has to go into the Barbarians because he has a different, oh gosh, what is it called? A different favor. So now he's advanced 9 on his charge in the Banner of Speed, so that's pretty cheeky there. We got 3 units of 10 Warrior Knights, all Sloth, all with great weapons, and then 1 has the Wasteland Torch, and then some 3 Feldraks with great weapons, and a Musician, and 2 units of 5 Flayers for Chav. So yeah, this is a list that's just gonna come at you and smash you. Or if you want to charge those Warrior Knights, they're -1 to wound with a 1, or in this case a 2-up armor save because they're great weapons, but they're effectively res 5, which is awesome. Well, it's even better actually because I could still be strength 7 and still wounding on 3s instead of 2s, and that makes a difference. So going into deployment today, we're doing marching columns, and the scenario is capture the flags, and we're on map A5. So we got some impassables and a hill that my greater demons can play with, and maybe mitigate some of this damage from the cultism master. I'm definitely looking to get the side of the hill personally. Because my opponent outranges me aside from the courtesan on all my units, I figure I just want to take more of a defensive position and let my opponent come to me because I have less scoring. And if he wants to get my units, yeah, he's got to come to me at this point. So, and let's see what happens though. So spell selection. I chose from Evo, Ancestral Aid, Hasten the Hour, Spectral Blades, Touch of the Reaper. I think that's no surprise to anyone there. Just needing those snipes and wanting rerolls to hit, rerolls to wound, lethal strike. That's straightforward. Same with Divination, to be honest. Know Thy Enemy, Fate's Judgment, Stars Align, and Unerring Strike. Unerring Strike isn't particularly too useful against the high armor stuff, but still good against the Feldraks. It can still take out that sorcerer, which is my main goal there, and also deal with his chaff. So I have redundancy in the rerolls to hit department as well, and then I also like having that agility buff to help the Myrmidons in case I want to go into that warrior unit. Yeah, or the Warriors of Greed. So, for my opponent, he took his Hereditary, of course. He took Breath of Corruption. He took the Rot Within, and then the Grave Calls. When I think about this, I feel like I've seen now a lot of people taking Rot Within, and in this particular matchup, I'd be tempted against me to take Marked for Doom, just because it's just one more snipe that you can threaten my greater demons with, and it just puts a lot of pressure on me. For the Adept in Alchemy, he chose Word of Iron and Glory of Gold. So yeah, that getting those up to a 1-up armor save on that warrior unit with the spiked shield is nasty. That combo is really nice. And then the rerolls, flaming attacks with rerolls to wound. I do have to be conscious of that with my if I'm going into combat with those demons. Even though I have a Resilience 6 and a Resilience 7 model, it's still having those reroll to wounds, like it's just dice, so eventually they will stack up. Yeah, so as I was saying before, I have the advantage on the objective personally, and I can use my greater demons to sort of zone and control his scoring units and kind of dictate where his characters go because of those snipes that I have access to. And if I really spread my scoring units out, he then has to allocate resources to different sides of the board, and therefore his occultism master can, his adept of alchemy can't support those combats. And I think as long as he's charging me, I think I do all right, because of the fact that he's doing great weapons. I'm AP2 base, and if he can't support the units, then I think I actually win some of these combats, whether it be with the Feldrax or against the knights. But yeah, that's my thinking at least. Then priority, of course, snipe those characters. I gotta keep putting pressure on those characters every turn, just trying to get like a wound or two and making my opponent make tough decisions on which spells to stop. So that being said, I'm also looking to go second because I want to be able to get the last turn to potentially get a scoring unit if I need to. Those characters are certainly issues that I have to deal with. I need to be careful of those range spells. I'm hoping my Miser can tank it, but I'm also hoping that the Miser becomes the target of the spells, because he is, out of all the models in the army I have, he's the most resilient. But I don't know. I feel like my opponent also has a lot of range damage spells to threaten my scoring units, and I think that can become a problem for me. So I'm saying it's a yellowish green matchup, because I think I out-magic him, and I do have the magic prowess to help me tip those combats even more. And then the fact that, if he's charging me with those knight units, he's losing that -1 to wound, and I'm going first anyway, so I still think I win those combats, as long as I'm conscious of what spells he's getting off to support those units, and making sure that my units are already buffed and prepared for that combat to happen. So yeah, we go into deployment. I rolled the side to choose, so I chose the side with the hill, so therefore my opponent dropped. And I chose the side with the hill, but I also chose to drop on my left side, and my opponent chose to do the same for marching columns. So I first dropped my 21 Myrmidons here, then my opponent dropped a unit of Sloth Knights, I dropped my Furies, and there's some flares there for my opponent, and then I dropped my Bloatflies. I was trying to bait out him dropping his Feldrax on the Bloatflies, because I know that they have hatred against fly, and I wanted to see where those Feldrax could go, because I felt like that was an easy scoring unit for me to get with range damage. But he instead dropped, I think wisely, he dropped his Barbarian. He dropped first, then I drop. Yeah, so that's how it worked. And so, actually, let me take that back. So he dropped his Barbarian unit with the flying character in there, and for whatever reason I decided to drop my flies here, because I think my thinking was, well, they're flying, I can move them more centrally and help me zone the center with my, they're my light troops unit. So I was thinking I could combo charge them into a unit that came too close to the courtesan or the miser, as long as they don't have to deal with that character, that flying chosen lord. So then after that, my opponent just decides to drop first. So you can see a sorcerer in the back, the Greed Warriors, Flares, his Wasteland Torch unit right here, which he then, of course, made the field into some ruins, and his final unit of Sloth Knights, and over on the far side, he's got his Feldrax. For me, you have my second unit of Furies, then I drop the Miser, just being close to that character, all of his characters here. I should mention his general is also in that Barbarian unit right in that corner, so I want the Miser right across, being able to snipe them. And then I put the courtesan on top of the hill to control the reroll. A reroll 9, advance 9 charge is great to try and control anything that comes too close. And then I decided, therefore, to drop my other two scoring units together away from the bulk of his army, so now he's got to divert resources this way, and then hopefully my courtesan can kind of help out and counter anything that comes and tries to deal with my 2 scoring units. So we have the 24 piercing spike myrmidons on top of the hill, and then we have the hoarders as on my far right. The hoarders really don't have a good matchup here, but I figured if they're going into anything, I actually kind of want them to just deal with the Feldrax, just because of, mirrored scales is helpful, and I just don't want them being tied up on knights, and that's a lot of points in that unit, so I just want to keep them away from potential counter charges with knights. So that's my thinking with deployment there. All right, that's just a look of my left flank here, and my right flank looking down his knights and his Feldrax. Okay, so Warriors of the Dark Gods, turn 1. My opponent moves up, but he doesn't come as far as he could. He doesn't march, I don't think, with anything. He keeps his flares back. He brings his barbarians up, purposely not marching here with his knight units, and so he's just kind of creating this convex shape, this nice little the rainbow curve, if you will, with his formation. So just and he's giving me double 6s on this charge right here, and he's keeping everything out of charge range of the miser, and I think he's also giving me double 6s on the courtesan as well, if I'm not mistaken. But he's keeping everything either outside of charge range or giving me double 6s. So in Magic, so I keep everything for either Breath of Corruption or Grave Calls, and I let my opponent get Rot Within off, as well as the Hellfire, and these dice here represent both my armor saves and my Aegis saves on the Hellfire. So I 4 wounds got through on the miser there, and the miser tanked the first Hellfire. So I'm pretty happy about that. All right, so we go into my turn 1. I come up tentatively, I would say. I shuffle the Myrmidons over slightly. I face the Bloatflies, facing his Sloth Knights to countercharge. However, when I'm looking at this picture now, I don't think they could fit between that rock and into his unit. Even if I were to combat reform and kind of slide over as much as I could, I'm not sure they would be able to do that now that I'm looking at it. So I think this is a mistake in more than one way, but I'm not going to spoil it for you yet. But yeah, I'm not sure if this was the right call here, but I wanted to at least present some sort of countercharging threat, I guess. I kept my chaff back. I didn't want to commit them yet. The miser moves up within 18 of his Chosen Lord and his barbarian unit. I come off the hill with the courtesan, which also I think was a bit of a... Well, I got within 18 of his Wasteland Torch unit, thinking I might as well try an Unerring Strike and start taking models off, maybe, trying to get lucky with it. But I came off the hill and giving him a 10 with his Wasteland Warrior unit. So, yeah, I think, again, if he charges me, the courtesan actually does okay. I think he just kind of ties me up for a bit, as long as he's the one who's charging. But I don't know. that's essentially my plan. I'm trying to bait out this charge a bit because I know I'm doing better if he's the one who's actually charging me. Everything else, the hoarders and the myrmidons just push up slightly. I'm not giving him any charges with these units here. I'm not wanting to get into charge range yet. I'm just kind of creating a nice little concave here. So in Magic, I just get a Know Thy Enemy off on the quarters end just in case something goes south. If he does choose to come in, he's now hitting me on 6s, which I'm really happy about, and I'm hitting him on 2s. Okay, so I get a Hasten the Hour off, and I choose his General, I get a wound, I choose his Chosen Lord, and I kill 1 Barbarian. And this is key because I rolled 3 dice, and I rolled a 6, a 4, and a 5, I believe. And my opponent chooses to use all 5 dice to try and stop Hasten the Hour. And he fails to stop it. And this is massive because I still have dice over for a Touch of the Reaper. And boom, I snipe his Chosen Lord with Touch of the Reaper. I get the spell off. I roll the 2 on the D3 and both wound. He doesn't have an armor save. So so I got lucky there. Wow, and that takes a good threat of his army that threatens my scoring units out of play and gives me some points. So I am very happy about that. Go, Miser, go. What this also does is rather key. The second mistake I made with the bloatflies was that I didn't see this at the time, but my opponent pointed out to me after I had sniped this character that had he had survived, he could physically see the bloatfly's corner, and it was a 9 charge on Swift Stride. He was only 9 he needed a 9 on Swift Stride, and so that would have been a flank as well. So, ooh, I dodged a bullet there, or in this case, a rocket. All right. So, Warriors of the Dark Gods turn 2. I think now, with that being said, with the Chosen Lord being gone, my opponent decides to back up a bit and give me more space. So I'm pretty happy about that. He brings his Sorcerer over here to still continue to either threaten my bloatflies or threaten the Miser. Alright, in this Magic phase, my opponent draws the 1 card, and I decided to dispel Breath of Corruption on the which would have targeted my Miser, because then any 6s, oh my goodness, I just didn't want Breath of Corruption and doing like the rerolls to wound on the Miser and then getting the 6s through, and I only get the Aegis save. So I stopped Breath of Corruption, which meant my opponent gets Hellfire through, but he boosted it and he miscast on 555, which goes to 4, which goes back to 5, because he used 3 dice, and his Sorcerer took a wound, which is helpful for me, and he only ended up doing 3 wounds to the bloatflies, so I made some Aegis saves here as well, and yeah, that really worked out for me there. All right, so my turn 2. I decide to bring my Chaff here with the Furies so that his Knights can't charge past and hit the Myrmidons. And yeah, I don't know. I think this was a mistake already, because what this does do is he can charge me. I'm giving him a flank. I purposely gave him a flank, and he can get the flank and he can get the overrun into the Myrmidons. I think at the time I was thinking, well, he's still technically counting as charging, so he doesn't get the... If he hits the Myrmidons, he doesn't get the -1 to wound. However, I am wrong in this thought process. And both my opponent and I agreed after, the wording of the sloth favor actually would mean he does in fact get his favor in the next round of combat. So I had miscalculated that, and so I think this maneuver here was a bit of a mistake. But at the time I didn't realize it. I bring the bloat flies over here. They're facing out towards the center. Watching the backs of the greater demons, just supporting for countercharges. I bring the courtesan all the way over with the 18-inch move or march. And now, because I'm within 12 of my general, I now have 21-inch range, and now I'm going for that unerring strike. So this was my opportunity to try and put some wounds on to his sorcerer, or if not, kill him. So this, I was taking another risk here, because now this charge here from the Wasteland Torch unit is only a 7 on Swiss Stride. The warriors I still think are out of charge range, but the knights can get in the front on a 7, and so I'm taking a risk to try and get this sorcerer. And again, I'm sitting there hoping, well, if I receive the charge, then I still think I do okay. And then I'm just holding right here. I'm just staying where I am. I don't need to push. I don't need to activate my chaff. I can just wait until he starts wanting to come and get these 2 units. So yeah, I'm happy about that position there. And now in Magic, I am able to get another Hasten the Hour, the small one, onto his general, the Adept. And now I force my opponent to make a tough decision. So I then cast Touch of the Reaper onto his general here. And my opponent now has to make a decision on maybe he lets this goes through in trying to stop Unerring Strike on his sorcerer, or he saves his general and then hoping I don't roll well on Unerring Strike. So my opponent chose to let Touch of the Reaper go through, and he figured that it was more important to save the sorcerer with all of that range damage than his general, and the sorcerer's still worth more points anyway than his general. So, boom, Touch of the Reaper gets him. Oh my goodness, that's the second character now that the Miser is killed. Whew. But he does stop he does save all of his dice, of course, to stop Unerring Strike on the sorcerer, but this still means I get his general, and I get the alchemy spells as well, so no more alchemic fire attributes, no more +1 armor, or no more 1-up armor saves on that greed unit. So okay, I'm happy about that. All right, he's charging. Here we go. The Wasteland Torch unit makes their 7 into the courtesan, and I'm a little nervous about that one. And of course, he takes the chaff, and he's going to get an overrun. Well, he's going to attempt to get an overrun into the Myrmidons. So my opponent goes for it. I think his thinking here is he just wants to tie up the courtesan so that my courtesan can't just Unerring Strike the sorcerer. So I totally understand why my opponent did that. But I'm also happy about it because now it's feeding me a scoring unit. So if I can get this unit, and maybe even this one here, I'm in good shape to win the objective for sure. So with movement, he moves his barbarians back because at this point they're kind of useless, and now they're a scoring unit that's in danger. He brings his warriors up in front. I think trying to give me a long charge in with the Miser. He hides his sorcerer behind the rock, so my miser cannot see the sorcerer, but he can. I'm still in his front arc, and he can still cast damage spells on me. Flayers are just coming back and saving their points, and he doesn't really move much on his left side, my right side. So we're still just kind of having a stalemate on this side of the board. All right, magic. He gets a grave calls up on my miser, and yeah, he's able to get 1 wound through. So I'm actually counting down. So the miser has 5 wounds left. So I'm very happy about that. Again, that miser's special ability, where as long as I have veil tokens in my veil pool, any sort of hits that go onto the miser become minus. They receive the minus A3 for excuse me. They receive a minus AP for each veil token I have. So I'm loving that ability right now. It's saving my butt. But other than that, he doesn't get anything else off. I believe I stopped Breath of Corruption on his knight unit. That was what I was holding all my dice for. All right, and so he naturally eats the chaff and overruns into the Myrmidons. And the courtesan kills 3 knights, and I take a wound in return. And he has a charge, a banner, and a wound. I kill 3 knights. It's a push. So in this sense, he's accomplished his task. But we'll see if the courtesan can outgrind the knights. I am pretty happy about it because I do have a counter charge with the bloatflies, so they can see the unit and they can fly over and hit this corner here. So I'm happy about that, and so that will hopefully add into some more combat res and gives me some strength 6 AP3 attacks as well as the toxic attacks. Yes, I know he has a 5 of Aegis against toxic, but every little bit helps. So that's indeed what happens. The bloatflies charge in. And that's it for everything else. I'm actually starting to move back now because at this point I'm feeling very confident that I'm going to win the objective. So I do not need to commit my other scoring units at all. I'm keeping my chaff in the center just in case something silly happens. However, I also think this is a mistake. I had the movement, I believe, to be able to fly them and block this charge here with the warriors, because say for example I kill enough, he then can charge his warriors into my bloatflies or possibly my courtesan depending on what's here. I think my thinking was I don't kill the unit but I break them, and then he runs and maybe blocks himself, but we'll see what happens there. My miser fails its mark check, so I simply just move him back 7 and make sure that the sorcerer's in my front arc, so I'm trying to snipe him. And I'm also trying to support my Myrmidon unit at this rate. So, magic, important. My opponent saves his dice to stop my snipes. But that what it does mean is I do get a Spectral Blades up. You'll have to excuse the Curse of the Phantom Queen. That is not the right spell. But that was the card I was using as a placeholder for Spectral Blades. And it is the boosted version. So now the Myrmidons have rerolls to wound with Lethal Strike. And I also just get a Know Thy Enemy up on the Courtesan. Just in case. I just want to make hitting her on 6s. Just want to keep her alive. I also fail my opponent also stopped Ancestral Aid on the Myrmidons, and I failed to cast Stars Align on 2 dice on the Myrmidons. So they have rerolls to wound, so I'm still feeling pretty confident about that combat. But it's now I'm wounding them on 4s instead of 3s with Lethal Strike. Alright, and after combat, he kills, looks like 4 or 5 of me. I think I rolled really well on my Aegis saves, to be honest. And then I killed 4 of him. And yeah, I have extra ranks here as well. We both have banners, and I win the combat, but he sticks. And then on this side, I kill, I think it looks like another 3 more. I kill another 3 more knights. I think he made some 6s on his on the saves from the courtesan, and I didn't get any toxic hits through. But now what this does is it opens up a charge from the warriors who need a 9 to get into this point here. I tried to reform in a way to prevent that from happening, but my opponent and I both talked about it, and there's no way I could do it. So it was like, oh well, I'm just going to have to take it. And they charge and roll a 6. They fail the charge. They needed a 9 on 2 dice, and they fail their charge. So I breathe another sigh of relief there. So here's a view from my opponent's perspective. So his turn 4, this is actually technically before the charge phase, but the warriors stumble forward. He moves his barbarians back. He brings his chaff over to the left, and then he puts this chaff in 2 by 3 formation, so they make a nice little line back here, and then he just slightly adjusts the Feldrax. I think he's trying to give me double 6s on the charge to try and bait a charge perhaps, but other than that, not much movement here. So yeah, he keeps his sorcerer there, which is a bit risky. He's taking a risk here because he's really trying to snipe my miser, but if I clear this knight unit, then my myrmidons will get a charge on his sorcerer. And yes, the myrmidons this time roll a bunch of 6s and just wipe the unit. And now I have a charge on his sorcerer. And essentially, the courtesan and the bloatflies, the bloatflies of course take a wound for the trouble here, but or they lose another model. They lose a model for their trouble, but they finish off the knights. Not a problem, and now it's my turn, so I get to charge if I want. And so sure enough, not only do I charge his sorcerer, he flees, and he rolls very well on his flee, and I need a 10 on Swift Stride, and I catch him. I rolled the 10 on Swift Stride to get him. So another... it's not too likely to happen there as well. And I got lucky. I made my leadership check to reform, and so now I'm facing the flank of the warriors, and I can still see the barbarians, and that's my only charge. Other than that, I don't need to charge these warriors with the flies and the courtesan. I really don't need to. Maybe I'm being a bit conservative here, but this time I decide to move the courtesan out of their line of sight, move the flies back out of their charge range, and just conserve their points. Because now I've won the objective. I don't need to throw in points and take risks at this rate. Other than that, the Furies just stay here to intercept if they need to. Yeah, so nothing too much happened in Magic. I killed 3 warriors with some snipes. Other than that, that was it. So in my opponent's turn 5, he moves his barbarians up to chaff my myrmidons. He just brings his chaff over. He's giving me double 6s on the charge here. But other than that, he has no magic. And he just turns to face the courtesan to have the front of the miser as well, and have the bloatflies all in their front. So that's basically all he can do at this rate. So I'm deciding to try and get some points. It's a bit risky here as well because even though I measured it out, I need a 5 overrun with my Myrmidons to overrun out of line of sight of the warriors. I'm still taking a risk, and not only that, I'm going through DTs. So it's an unnecessary risk for 200 some points. But I decided to charge. I think I lost one to dangerous terrain at the moment. But then, yeah, with movement wise, I move the courtesan around again in the flank and also threatening these units as well. The miser stays out of their charge range. I just move the flies back over here to conserve points, and nothing else happens on the right. Or I just continue to move back 2.5 inches, because at this rate I do not plan on engaging on my right side at all. So magic, in case something goes wrong, this is really overkill, but in case something happens with the Myrmidons and the warriors charging in, if I don't, I guess I get Know Thy Enemy up and Stars Align to just really buff the crap out of this unit. And that's going to be nicely because they have Stars Align will go great with Devastating Charge, Battle Focus. So yeah, that Barbarian unit is dead. And they actually didn't kill them to a man. There's one left who broke, and so I decided to run him down, and I rolled a 12 on my overrun. Which is just, again, my dice were really hot today. And so I take a whole bunch of DTs, I lose some more, but not enough to get half points, and I bump into the courtesan. So yeah, my opponent's turn 6, he turns to face the courtesan here. He moves out of line of sight with his knight unit, so the courtesan can only see the warriors of the dark gods and just brings everything else as far over as possible, knowing that, it's just no point in trying to push me at all. So this is the last pick of the game. So I chose not to charge the courtesan or any other unit. I simply moved the miser up and moved the courtesan in front of the knights. I got a hasten the hour off on the knights. I think my opponent tried to stop an Unerring Strike, and again, I get it through anyway, and I get Unerring Strike on this unit of flayers. I actually don't kill them, but they panic, and they break, and so that still ends up giving me full points for the unit, so I'm just picking up little bits of points at the final turn of the game. Okay, so yeah, that was a 19-1 with the objective to the Demon Legions. Thank you so much to my opponent for the game. It was a lot of fun and well played. So yeah, and it was also, I have to say, it was really, really nice to just be playing outside in my opponent's garden and enjoying the weather. Yeah, and it was just a really lovely time. I highly recommend it. But so my opponent only got a unit of Furies on my end, and then from my opponent I got all 3 of his characters, 2 units of Knights, his Barbarians, and his Flayers, which made it a very large difference. So it made it a 16-4, and then with the objective made it a 19-1. All right, so yeah, overall, I was happy with more of my macro decisions. I was happy with the fact that I chose to spread out as much as I could with my scoring units. And just also happy with the fact that I didn't need to commit. I didn't need to push and just let my opponent come to me. The double master is just really devastating. It helps deal with those single models or characters or just even units in general. chaff or just blowing a chunk out of an infantry unit, or with Unerring Strike. So I think what's hard about the Evo Div combo is you have the redundancy with the rerolls to hit. You have an agility modifier. You have 2 snipes. You have 2 damage spells, and it's just, your opponent is just really forced into a position to make tough choices, and it allowed me to pick up points and continue to cripple my opponent's magic phase. I did take some risks in letting my units get charged, but I figured I'd still turn out all right, and my prediction was correct in this case because of the Sloth Knights still hitting last, and they're losing their favor if they charge me. I was making micro mistakes with my chaff today. I let that overrun happen. Wasn't happy about that. And I also allowed the warriors to even have a charge on the bloatflies. So yeah, those were some micro mistakes there, and also letting the greater demons get charged. Again, I calculated the risk, but it's still a risk that I'm taking there. So I don't know. I had to think about it a bit more. I got lucky to snipe the Chosen Lord turn 1. That was just luck. That's all I can say. But I was happy I dealt with him. And yeah, I was really happy with the Miser overall. The Miser tanked a whole lot of ranged damage. And so this is where I think I'm wondering, perhaps it would have been better for my opponent to be targeting, say, that unit of Myrmidons on my left side to just make them way less combat ineffective with all of those range damages, and instead say, I'm ignoring the Miser, or perhaps go after the Courtesan instead, because the Courtesan is way more vulnerable to the range damage than the Miser is. So that was some thoughts I had there, and I was happy that the Miser was the focal point, which I can totally understand why, because he's a lot of points, and he is the character that snipes his characters, so he has to deal with him, and he's my general. So yeah, makes sense of why my opponent was targeting the Miser, but Miser's a tank. All right, so thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate it, and if you're feeling spicy, please like and subscribe. And I'm really looking forward to the next one. We'll see if I can get a next one in. I do go on vacation coming up in a couple of weeks back to the United States, so I'm not sure if I'll be able to get in a match 6 for the Berlin Liga, but we'll find out. Let's see what arrangements I can make. But in the meantime, if I am back in the United States, you can sure bet I'm going to get some classic Dread Elf action back on the channel again, going back to my roots, my first army. They are waiting for me back home. So I'm excited to get to play them and just reconnect with some of my friends as well. So anyway, everyone, thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao, y'all.